The last phylum that we look at when we study invertebrates is actually Phylum Chordata. And Chordata is a phylum that does include vertebrates. It has some invertebrates, but is mostly vertebrates. So I want to make sure you don't equate Chordata and chordates with vertebrates because they're not necessarily the same. All vertebrates are chordates, but not all chordates are vertebrates. So that's why this phylum does belong in our exploration of invertebrates. So we're going to be looking at those members of Chordata who are invertebrates. And we're calling them sort of primitive chordates because they are kind of the least complex of the members of phylum Chordata. So some traits that belong to the entire phylum, including the vertebrates, the presence of what's called a notochord. A notochord is basically kind of dense sheath cells. So these are cells that sort of protect the central nervous system. The notochord is going to have basically the spinal nerve column that runs through it. Now, not all members of chordata have a spine, so that's something to remember, but they do all have a notochord. Pharyngeal gill slits, so tiny slit-like openings. Believe it or not, humans actually had these too at some point in our fetal development. So basically, when you have a fertilized egg developing into an embryo, that embryo, for a very short amount of time, actually has gill slits. So it's kind of amazing. It's sort of a shout out to our amphibious and even previously aquatic ancient ancestors. So all members of chordata at some point in their development have these gill slits. All of them have a postanal tail, so a tail that extends beyond the digestive tract. We actually have that too. It's just extremely short. That's our tailbone. And a dorsal hollow nerve tube. So that dorsal hollow nerve tube is again surrounding that notochord. So whether or not there's a spine around it is a different story. Again, vertebrates are going to have a full-on spine surrounding their nerve tube, but not all members of chordata do because not all members are truly vertebrates. So the invertebrates have this, but they don't have a spine. They don't have a bone around it. So within the phylum, we're going to look first at a subphylum. This is called Urochordata. This group, Urochordates, are called sea squirts. And sea squirts are pretty cool, and you might have seen them. They tend to be found stuck to underwater pilings and stuck to rocks, even in the intertidal. And they're basically little blob-like creatures, but they have siphons through which they pump water, and they filter feed that way. Their scientific name is tunicates because they have inside of their body a tiny, it almost looks like a little laundry basket that's called a tunic, and that's what they use for the filtration part of their feeding. These guys can be colonial, so you might find them in large clusters, or they could be solitary, it just depends. And they also have the ability to regenerate. So when you see these things at first, you think, okay, of all the invertebrates, this is the one that's the most closely related to us. That seems kind of crazy, especially when you look at their body plan. But it's true, they are. So this is the inside of a tunicate or a sea squirt, and this is that tunic, this is that basket in there. They also call it the pharyngeal basket, and that's where the filtration comes in. And then you can see the rest of its systems here. We have the digestive system down below. There's a stomach. The heart is down there, circulatory system. And then it actually has, it doesn't really show it on here, but it actually does have that notochord, and it kind of starts here and it loops all the way down. It makes like a U shape. So think Urochordata, and the letter U is the shape that the notochord assumes. Also are salps. This is another member of this group. Salps are free-swimming tunicates, so they are, as opposed to the sea squirts, which stay attached to objects, salps are free-swimming. So similar idea. Again, here you can actually see their notochord that kind of wraps around like this. So this big piece here is a notochord. So similar, but free-swimming. And then also we have members of this group are called larvaceans. These are also free-swimming, tiny and kind of long and narrow-shaped, but they spit out this big web of mucus to filter feed with. So they're also in that category. The other subphylum in Urochordata, other than the tunicates, this is subphylum Cephalochordata. So these guys are also known as lancelets. Now, at first glance, you might think this is something fish-like a tiny eel or even something like a sardine. but they are not a fish. They are in fact an invertebrate. So they have, again, that notochord, which is actually the yellow portion that runs along here. So I'm sorry, the green portion is the notochord, the yellow portion is a nerve cord. So these are actually two separate pieces. The notochord is kind of a rigid-like structure to support the nerve cord. So the nerve cord is in yellow and the notochord is in green. So if you look at it from the front, you see the same thing. Here's that big notochord, and then the nerve cord is right above it. So these guys, again, they're fish-like. You can actually eat them. They're actually kind of fish-like in taste as well, but they're not truly fish. They tend to be bottom dwellers, so they'll hang out in the sediment, and they also are suspension feeders, so they will actually take water in and filter feed as well. You can see here this is part of their gills. So you have the gill slits, which are, again, a characteristic of all members of the phylum, and in here is the digestive system. This little front piece that you see here, these tentacles, are part of their filter feeding system as well. So this is what it would look like under a microscope. So here's that notochord that you see running through here. So that's the lancelets. All right, so that's actually it for this phylum as far as invertebrates are concerned. So those are just the two subphylum that you should understand, Urochordata and Cephalochordata. And again, you can see a little update here on the right side of the screen. So these are just the primitive chordates for now. We're not looking at the entire phylum this week, but next week we will be moving into marine fishes, and so then we will explore the rest of Phylum Chordata.